Hey everyone, today I wanted to make a quick video on how to actually learn n8n. This is from my experience, but if you've ever been in a situation where you got sold on the idea of n8n, being able to build workflows quickly or AI agents quickly, but then got into the tool and slightly struggled with it or didn't know what was happening, this video is for you. Honestly, it's a common thing that I see when people start out with n8n. They get pitched on the idea that they can build out complex workflows, build it within minutes, and then be able to run a business or do some type of manual task really easily. While it is possible, oftentimes I see people struggle with getting started. And you may have been pitched on the idea that you can get started with a template really easily. And honestly, the templates are quite useful, at least from what I've used. And then you may have also been pitched on being able to use AI to build out the workflows, really complex workflows very easily. And yes, that's definitely possible. But the reality of the situation is that you're going to want to understand some of the building blocks of n8n before you can actually build anything useful. I personally started my n8n journey using some of the templates, AI generated workflows, as well as just infinite YouTube tutorials. And while that is a good introduction into n8n and a surface level understanding, when you actually get into the tool, it can get a bit more complex. There's a lot of buttons that videos don't cover. There's so many factors within the tool that you'll want to understand those building blocks so you can actually build upon your knowledge and become an effective workflow builder over the longer term. While using shortcuts can feel productive, at the end of the day, they can actually delay the real understanding. So some of the shortcuts that I've seen are obviously, jumping into the templates and trying to connect everything using AI generated workflows and getting those initial nodes up and running. But then there are situations like never touching authentication and how to get credentials attached, never inspecting node outputs to actually know what data is going from this node to the next node, not using the docs. The docs are actually incredibly well built out, and there's a lot of AI features around that to be able to consume the docs in an easier fashion. And then I think the biggest one is just building for absolute vibes and not production level workflows, right? Because you can get something working pretty quickly, but then how is that going to translate into the real world when things break and you don't know how to handle errors? So those are some of the shortcuts that I've seen. n8n is definitely a really cool tool, and it can be really useful for just about any situation because effectively you can automate anything you can imagine. But learning n8n isn't just about building cool stuff as fast as possible. It's understanding how information flows from one node to the next. So in my opinion, there's a couple of core building blocks that you want to really understand how to use first, and then be able to use some of the things like templates and AI workflows to make that process a lot simpler. So in my opinion, you should start off with creating a free account or downloading it locally. There's a ton of tutorials already out there, and that way you can get into the tool and start messing around with it before throwing a template into there. I actually should just start off with using a couple of simple nodes, drag and drop whatever you want to use, and then try to get from one node to the other without facing any errors. And whenever you do face errors, try to figure out where those errors are coming from. Once you start to get a bit more complex, you want to break things on purpose and understand how they're breaking and how you can resolve those. And a big thing is being able to attach credentials. Because if you don't know how to use credentials in n8n, you are really missing out on a lot of the value of the tool. So that's something that you'll want to do. You'll have to venture out into the third-party tools, find out how to get the API keys for the tools that you want to use. It's a bit different in every scenario, but getting into the rhythm of how to get those API credentials and getting them over to n8n is going to be a huge unlock for you. So I just want to show you a few examples of where you can potentially start. Right? The AI features here are pretty good. For a beginner, I'd actually just click this plus sign right here, and you'll see that it opens up the triggers that are available in n8n. So I deeply understand how each of these triggers work because this is how any workflow is initiated within n8n. So trigger manually, you can use this in when you're first starting out, just in a developed environment. On app events, this is what I see a lot of business users use. So if something happens in Slack, Notion, etc., that will trigger the workflow. This is on a schedule. Some people call it, the technical term is cron job. We can run this every hour, every day, or custom intervals. If you're looking to use webhooks, if something else happens in a different app and it makes a webhook to n8n, I can trigger that. You can do it on form submission. So you can have a public facing form. Once that is filled out, then that will trigger the workflow. You can also have it done by a sub workflow. So if something happens in a different workflow, it can call this sub workflow, and then it will carry out the entirety of that, the steps laid out in that. So, there's a bunch of triggers all right here. I would recommend getting started here because without any of these trigger workflows, you're not going to have any workflow initiated. So I drag in one of these and get to playing with that. Then after you get familiar with trigger workflows, you can take it one step further and pull in a dummy node that you can connect. So typically what I see here is you can do an action in an app. So there's thousands of integrations here. I'd use something simple. So when I first got started, I always went to the Google Suite because it's a tool that I've been using for a long time. And you can log onto Google Cloud Console, be able to create something, be able to create a sheet or a document in Google and get started to consume that information relatively quickly. So if I have Drive connected, I can use any of these functions. And yeah, I would just try to maybe something as simple as deleting a file. So you can create a file in Google Drive. It can be dummy data. Once you get your credential attached, you should be able to access that data. And then you can have the operation selected, be able to find the correct file, and then have it done. And you can check your work to see if it was actually deleted in your drive. And those small wins will teach you how to use each node effectively. So that's a bit about how I'll get started, use a few dummy nodes, be able to get data from one place to another. And a big thing that I would focus on early on, in case you don't know how to deal with credentials or authentication, is going to the overview page. I'm just going to leave without saving. I don't need that workflow. But then I go into credentials and, I've got a couple of credentials already attached here, but I would go into your account, try to find out which apps that you want to work with and be able to add in those credentials, because without the third-party softwares that you're going to interact with, n8n is going to be really hard to use. So learn how to attach credentials, learn how to find the API keys for the different softwares that you use, and add them into n8n so you can start to get information from those apps accessible to n8n. Now, once you've got a few nodes chained together with apps that you're familiar with, at that point, you should know how things connect together, how data gets from one node to the next, and you can start to do some more complex tasks. So at that point, maybe I'll take a look at some of the AI features, use the text to workflow generator to build something that you're interested in, and then be able to attach those credentials and make sure that you know how a complex workflow is built. At this point, you could also use templates, things that other people have built that bring utility, and you can try to get that template working. Now, as you're using the AI workflow builder or the templates, you'll notice that the other creators and AI are able to use conditional logic. The logic is what n8n makes n8n really powerful. So if I go into here, add this trigger manually, and then from here, what we can take a look at is data transformation. So here is where we can do powerful things like filter, aggregate. You'll want to understand each of these nodes because these will be used in more complex workflows. The same way with flow nodes. So things like this condition, go this route. If not, then go this route. So this is how you can start to branch off, and you'll see that a lot in templates. The same thing with merge, being able to get data from two nodes combined into one and then take action on that and then loop over items. This is something that you just don't see in other automation tools. You can do some really complex tasks with this. So that's how I'd start off. Build out some workflows really easily, understand credentials, use the AI builder or templates, and then understand more and more about complex logic workflows. Now, after those initial building blocks, you're probably ready to get started building in n8n. At that point, I'd pick a project that's personal to you, something that would actually bring your life value and something that you'd want automated. Whether it's in your personal life, taking a look at your bank statements and organizing that, or if it's for your job and you want to automate something that's really manual in your 9 to 5, that's a project that I'd start off with. For example, something that I'm personally invested in is actually personal investing and personal finance. So I've got a couple of stock tickers that I've done a lot of manual work on to research, but then I built a stock agent to be able to take a look at the different companies that I'm invested in, look at the 10Ks, and then bring the information that's important to me when I make financial decisions. That's made my life a lot easier. And the reason I continued on with that project is because it was something that I was actually interested in. I spent extra time to make sure that it got the output that I wanted. And after that project and the building blocks that I mentioned before, that's when I truly felt that I was understanding n8n and increased my knowledge. So if I could go back in time and educate myself on how to actually learn n8n, these are the steps I'd follow because that is what brought me true understanding. Obviously, the templates, AI workflows, those are all helpful tools, but it's going to skip the true understanding that you need to build effective workflows in n8n. And I guarantee you, it's going to save you a lot of time down the road if you're serious about building workflows in n8n, whether it's for work, your personal business, or whatever it is that you're looking to automate. So obviously, this is my own opinion and my experience, but I hope you found this video useful. If you like content like this in the world of AI agents, automation, and how to build effective workflows, please give this channel a like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next one.